We should be live, just have to send an announcement. All right, we should be all set. Just gotta connect the WebSocket on TikTok. I have a very upset kitty. All right, I think that we are all set to go. You guys know what to do. If you're just now joining, make sure to like the live, send out, share it with your friends and so on, so that we can get more people in here, and more people means more questions, which is good for everybody. You might hear a cat whining. If you hear a cat whining, it is because there's a cat whining in my office. Hey Blitz, if you were at nearly light speed in a spaceship and jumped off the front forward, would you not be traveling at the same speed or faster? No. Velocity addition doesn't work that way near the speed of light. Velocities don't add the way that you would like them to. If you were on a 10-mile-an-hour train and you walk forward in the train at 10 miles an hour, you will not be traveling forward at 20 miles an hour, just very, very, very close to 20 miles an hour. But that difference gets bigger the closer you get to the speed of light. It's a very interesting phenomenon. It's called relativistic velocity addition, but it is real. Yeah, I know you hear the cat in both cases. She is very upset, but she has been very problematic for us for the last few days. And so, because she hasn't been letting anybody sleep. And so we're trying to make sure that she stays awake during the day so that she doesn't keep us awake at night. So she's currently scratching at my office door because she wants to run into my bedroom and go sleep under the bed. But I'm not gonna let her. I don't know, is that torturing a cat? But it's becoming unbearable. So, does space expand 3.2 times as fast as light? Space doesn't really have a speed that it expands at, it has a rate. So think of like a doubling rate. And like if you said that a piece of paper doubled in size every, I don't know, every 10 minutes, you wouldn't say that that's like 5 miles an hour, right? You would say it as a doubling time. Any fun facts about dark matter? Still doing my research project and haven't watched the lives for a while. Also have a great rest of your day. Fun facts? Not really. It's pretty not fun. It's actually like remarkably boring. That's the thing. What's your opinion on religion? I don't believe in it. Did you study theoretical physics or just physics? I don't know which to do. So when I was an undergrad, there wasn't an option. It was just physics. I bet you don't care, but I had a grad school interview. I had a postdoc interview yesterday. So take that. I know, she is very sad. She just hates closed doors. That's the problem, but she'll chill out. The earth is round, right? Yeah. Do you hate philosophy? No. Are you single? What's your LinkedIn? I'm not telling you that. I'm not single though. What do you think happened before the Big Bang? I don't have like a set view about what I think happened before the Big Bang. I'm pretty agnostic about it, if there even was a before. What does space expand into? It doesn't expand into anything. There's not like edges of space. The universe, it wouldn't really make sense to say that there's an edge of the universe, right? Because that means that there's something beyond the universe, and the universe is everything. All right, let's make sure I'm not missing any. When did you learn calculus? Sophomore year of high school? Do you think nuclear power, fission, and fusion will become the future of energy production? All right, my wife just let the kitty out against my will. No, not against my will. She's just very upset. All right, well, kitty is free now to sleep throughout the day and then keep us awake at night. We'll wake her up again in a few hours probably. Anyway, sorry about that. Is infinite bounce and bang paradoxical? No, I wouldn't say it is. Would any interstellar planets be affected if we did nuclear testing in space? I wouldn't say so. How do you pour a bowl of cereal? Cereal first, milk second. Which country do you think produces the best physicists? Well, I mean, like historically, probably the former Soviet Union produces like spectacular physicists. And then also the United States has produced spectacular physicists. Germany as well has produced spectacular physicists. More recently, China and Japan have produced spectacular physicists. But I don't think that it's as much about like any particular country. I think it's just that like, look, when countries are wealthy, when they're doing well, when they have a successful economy, I shouldn't say the Soviet Union was wealthy, but when they have a successful economy, which means that they can invest a lot in education, I think that any country can produce great physicists. How does something come from nothing? I don't think anything did come from nothing. I don't even know if nothing ever existed. Is there Earth flat relative to an observer moving towards it at close to the speed of light? Well, sure, but it's like two-sided flat, right? Can I streamline it into physics grad with math? I already took diff, geo, and PDE, but was bad in high school physics. You'll have a hard time. You'll have a lot to catch up to if you do a physics grad school with a math undergrad, but it's not impossible. Where can I find a theorist mathematician to ask a few questions? Me? Maybe. It depends on what your questions are. Are you more likely to believe in God if Alex O'Connor does? Not really. What do you study in physics? So I do mostly relativity and you know, the mathematics behind it, and then I dabble in like cosmology, black hole stuff. Are we really in a simulation? Also, do you think the universal laws of physics will work in other galaxies? Yeah, almost certainly the universal laws of physics will work in other galaxies, and I don't think that we're living in a simulation, no. Are there other universes? We don't have any evidence of them, but maybe. Your thoughts on Eric Weinstein? He's a grifter. Can time exist without entropy? That's a good question. We don't know the answer. How do we know there is nothing beyond the universe? I mean, the universe is kind of defined to be everything. Like that's just what the word means. So it doesn't really make sense to say that there's something beyond the universe if the universe is everything, because then that would mean that there's something not in the universe, but the universe is everything. Besides bananas, do any other common things give off antimatter? Anything with potassium in it, really. What do you think is in the middle of a black hole? My guess is it's a very, very dense type of matter that we're just not familiar with. What exactly is energy? Energy is a number. It's like a number like speed or temperature that characterizes certain kinds of systems that obey certain kinds of laws. Could gauge symmetry just be an artifact of how we describe things, not an actual physical property? Well, yeah, I mean, that is kind of the principle of a gauge symmetry, that it's describing a redundancy. Is the universe topologically open, closed, or do we not know yet? So we don't know. At this point, we don't know. Why is potassium emitting antimatter? Well, so there are certain isotopes. There's in particular one isotope of potassium that's fairly common and also radioactive. And one of the ways it undergoes decay is by beta positive decay, which is when a proton converts into a neutron and gives off a antimatter electron. I think that I'm getting the decay mode correctly. Let me just double check. Positive beta decay. Potassium. Yep. Yeah. So potassium can undergo positron emission to argon-40, and it does so when at a 0.001% probability. This is just an isotope of potassium, and it's naturally occurring. Not sure you noticed, but someone donated $2 over YouTube chat. Oh, thank you. I did miss that because I was looking at my other screen. Dr. Wasambla, just saying hi to support your channel. Great job. I appreciate you, and thank you for the $2 British dollars. I know they're called British pounds, but can you go over closed and open systems? So this is a notion in thermodynamics, or these are notions in thermodynamics that essentially refer to whether or not stuff can get in or out. And when I say stuff, it could be particles, it could be energy, it could be, well, it's basically those two things. So you would say that there's an open system if like stuff can flow in and out. You'd say it's a closed system if stuff can't. Sometimes in like chemistry, closed systems are used to describe those where particles can't flow in and out. So people might say that the Earth is a closed system because even though energy comes in and out, like nothing really leaves the Earth except spaceships and some like atoms of various gases. But thermodynamically, we would say that Earth is an open system. we can call them dollars if we want to. We won the Civil War. We have that right. If phi isn't special, why is it defined? It's a nice number. It has a nice property, but it's not like special. It's not really involved in physics or anything. If the universe is expanding, where is it expanding into? The universe isn't expanding into anywhere. The universe, as far as we can tell, doesn't have edges, right? So it's not like the edges are getting further away from each other. What's happening is that you have like a given chunk of space, and that chunk of space is getting bigger. So one way that you could think about it is like, imagine that you have a spreadsheet, like an Excel spreadsheet. And, in principle, an Excel spreadsheet has an infinite number of columns. But imagine that each of those columns is made like twice as wide. Well, now it expanded, but there's no edge to the columns. Do rockets hurt the ozone layer? I'm sure they probably do a little bit, but probably not in any significant way. We can call dollars, yeah. Is climate change a hoax? No, it's absolutely not. If black holes destroy information at the event horizon, could a particle lose its superposition? So as far as, the general view is that black holes don't destroy information. If the universe is, I already answered that. What was your research in for your PhD? So I have a physics PhD, and what I was studying was something called, it's a type of geometry called conformal geometry, which has nice applications for the ADS CFT correspondence. Somebody 8 minutes ago, Juno, sent $3.69 for a watch Nova on PBS. I know everything now. That's true. That was on Cash App, by the way. So sometimes I might be slow to catch the Cash App donos, if only because I don't get notifications on my phone. It doesn't like buzz or anything, so I have to look at it occasionally. So sorry about that if I miss it. Your opinion on the way Neil deGrasse Tyson communicates science. I think he does a fairly good job generally. He gets some things wrong, but I think that generally speaking, he does a decent enough job at exciting the masses and not being wrong about a whole lot. He gets some things wrong occasionally, but not often. Now, I don't know how he is as a person. I know that they're credible. I know that I don't know how credible are. I know that there are accusations that he's done some pretty bad things in his personal life or but I can't comment on that. I don't know anything about it. But as far as a science communicator goes, he does a pretty good job. What's the best way to characterize the stuff before matter from decoherence? Well, decoherence doesn't really affect whether there's matter. So you might say that before there was matter, there were just kind of like high energy quantum fields. Before that, and like this could be described as what was the case before or during inflation rather. But in some sense, like post Big Bang, there would always have been matter. What would it do to physics if we decided dividing by zero can be done and define it to be 0 or 1? Well, look, you can define a system where dividing by zero is allowed, but then it just has nothing to do with numbers. How do you know if you should study physics? Is interest and passion enough? Yes, but also, like, just being honest, there is a degree of mathematics comfortability that you must have, because mathematics is the language of physics. So, like, there is a sense in which you should be comfortable doing mathematics. Like, you should be able to view it as like a language that you're fluent in rather than like some machinery that like is foreign to you. Is Brian Cox the best physicist alive? No. What do you respond when Christians bring up the fine-tuning argument? I just ask them how they know what the probability distribution is. That's probably the best answer in my view. Blitz, is the singularity still generally accepted as the origin of the universe? No. No, it's not. Can physics tell us if it's possible for a functioning brain to exist with no qualia? I don't think that's a physics question. What do you think happened before the Big Bang? I don't even know if there was a before the Big Bang. How far in the past did 3i Atlas pass the sun? So 3i Atlas's closest approach to the sun was on October 29th. So like a week ago. Why isn't some form of Kaluza-Klein still entertained today in quantum gravity research? It is. People still talk about that kind of stuff. It's just not super popular. Should there be a high tide, low tide on Great Lakes? No, not really. So the amount of tide that you have is basically proportional to how much surface area the body of water contains. And so like the ocean is basically one continuous thing. Like there's no individual oceans. And so you'll have large tides on oceans because they basically cover 70% of the earth. Lakes, on the other hand, do not, and so they are going to have significantly smaller tides. What is generally accepted as the origin of the universe? There isn't general consensus as far as I can tell. I mean, if a person does well in math when they actually choose to study, yet it's not their strength, well, okay, yeah, then you'll be fine. What would the chance be of a partial range up just large enough to tunnel a windshield? Oh, I'd have to do that calculation, but that is probably very, very unlikely. Like probably it would never happen in the age of the universe. By the way, if you're spamming a question, I'm going to avoid it, so please don't. If humans were to transport consciousness into a rocket, could we dodge the end of the universe? No. We're part of the universe, so how could you dodge the end? From Oniwin, do you know any online resources for getting started learning quantum mechanics or other fields of physics I need to learn first? So thank you for the $5, first of all. Second, yeah, there are going to be, of course, a lot of these kinds of resources, a lot of online free textbooks, for example. I think that also MIT OpenCourseWare will probably have what you're looking for, as well as Khan Academy. I know that Rice University... I think Rice University has an intro physics textbook. However, it's on OpenStax. I don't know if they actually have quantum mechanics, but if you're going to do quantum mechanics, you should probably get familiar with classical mechanics first. So their classical mechanics textbook is quite good. I've used it when I was teaching, when I was a grad student, I was teaching undergrads. So that's a good place to start. It's called OpenStax, OPENSTAX.org, and then just type in like OpenStax, Rice University, physics textbook or something, and you'll find it. It's fairly long, but it does have good questions. It does a good job. Do you believe in a universe always existing? I think that there has never not been a universe, if that makes sense. How old are you? I'm 32. Go outside? No. Is calculus only used in physics? I want to retake Calc 2 due to bad grade. I already have a BA though. I don't know what you mean is calculus only used in physics. Calculus is used elsewhere, but calculus is used a lot in physics. May I ask what time you usually go live in the time zone? I can't quite catch your live. So there was a time change recently, and I live in Arizona, so Arizona doesn't do the time change. So my schedule has roughly changed by it's moved back by about an hour. So on most days of the week, I will be live at around 11 a.m. Eastern time, which is around 9 a.m. Mountain time. What's your view on the three-body problem? It's it's a perhaps mathematically interesting, but physically uninteresting dynamical system. Like that's just, like we know how to solve it, we just solve it numerically. Why doesn't Arizona have a time change? Oh, who knows? It's been a little warm for November. Yeah, it has. It absolutely has. Thoughts on an infinite regress? I don't see any issues with it. How many meters is in 1 Newton? I need it for my exam. You're making the wrong comparison. Newtons and meters are different things. You can't, it'd be like asking how many feet are in 3 pounds. What if neutrinos, they've some mass or antiparticles in the extreme far places in intergalactic space at the edge of the universe, making up additional gravity thought to be made by dark matter? Look, so we can actually map out where the dark matter is. And the dark matter is basically everywhere. It's clustered around galaxies. So it can't just be that there's extra stuff very, very far away that's causing this extra gravity. Can you explain the Schrodinger equation? Yeah, I'll do my best. So the way that we describe quantum systems is in terms of waves. So you think of imagine like a sound wave, like it's flat when there's no sound, and then it's jiggly where it is sound, and then it's flat again. So the place where you are along that line, like whether you're in the jiggly part or whether you're in the flat part or whether you're in the left side of the jiggly part or the right side of the jiggly part, wherever you are, that's called the phase of the wave, right? Like the place, the location in the oscillation, that's the phase. And so what the Schrodinger equation says is that if a particle or some quantum system is described by a wave, then the rate at which you move through the rate at which you move through the wave, like the rate at which you move from peak to trough, is determined by the energy of the wave. That's basically it. Could there exist a physical system where energy conservation simply doesn't apply? Yeah, our universe. Yes, lots. Pure math or pure physics, which undergrad is better to develop general problem-solving skills? Probably, my guess is pure math, probably. Unless you want to do physics problem-solving, then you probably need pure physics. Do you think we can 3D print graphene? I don't know anything. I don't know nothing about it, but I don't know much about graphene, so I'm not comfortable answering that. Warp drive when, not if. Warp drive seems like it's going to require negative mass matter, and as far as we can tell, that's not something that's physically possible. So it is an if, and the if is, it's not. Was dark energy different when the Big Bang happened? If expanding, what does this say? If the expansion of the universe is a speed based size on the patch, how is it expanding quickly? Yeah, so dark energy, so for a while we thought that dark energy was like a constant, that it was basically fixed throughout all of the history of the universe. However, recent data starting the last few years has come out suggesting that the strength of dark energy, or perhaps the amount of dark energy, is dynamic, meaning that it's changing with time. And in fact, I'm going to be releasing a video tonight that is talking about even more data that we have that indicates that. What do you think about the field as the governing agent of the particle quoted from Einstein? I think that he was probably mistaken. So 3I Atlas didn't happen in the far past. 3I Atlas is a comet that's currently in our solar system. It's an interstellar comet. Do you think quantum gravity could be explained through bandwidth? No, I don't even know what that means, actually. Is the big freeze theory the most realistic end to the universe? It used to be. Not anymore, perhaps. When's the live stream tonight? What live stream? Is the future fixed? Is our universe deterministic? In a sense, at least if you take the many worlds interpretation, there is a sense in which the future is fixed. Yeah. How does quantum entanglement relate to how living beings impact one another? It really doesn't, at least not if you take the consensus view of physics. Would time have been slower in the further back in time due to mass being closer together? No. So what causes time dilation, gravitational time dilation, which is what you're referring to, is a difference in gravitational potential, basically. And differences in gravitational potential only occur when there are differences in the distribution of mass, in the distribution of matter, say. If you have a lot of matter here and not a lot of matter here, then there will be some gravitational potential difference between the two. But if everything is pretty uniformly massive, then there will be no gravitational potential difference. What do you think about black hole cosmology? I think it's probably false. 3A Atlas sped up? Yeah, this is the thing that comets do pretty frequently. Have you had enough water today? Almost certainly not. Do you lean towards many worlds interpretation of wave function collapse? Well, the many worlds interpretation explicitly holds the many worlds interpretation says that the wave function doesn't collapse, but yes, that is the way I lean. What are the odds that the moon landing was not real? Close to 0. By the way, if I do miss your question, I have to apologize. However, I do have 3 different sources of questions that I'm getting from TikTok, YouTube, and YouTube again. So if I miss your question, I apologize, but please don't spam. You can feel free to ask your question again, just don't spam it. Have you ever interacted with a well-informed and educated creationist? In some sense, those are kind of, well, okay. Depends on what you mean by educated. So there are people who know a lot of facts, but I don't think that they're very good at evaluating the data that or the facts that they know. They're not very good at incorporating that into their worldview or critically evaluating them. So in that case, maybe they are well-informed and educated in that they know a lot, but they might not be thinking about things, you know, in a rigorous way. I heard about white holes in the news recently. Can you explain the difference? I don't know where you would have heard about white holes in the news. I haven't heard about them in the news, but white holes almost certainly don't exist. White holes are just kind of, think about running a black hole in reverse. It's basically the whole business of what a white hole is. Why is the universe expanding, and on what space is it expanding? So the universe is expanding because that's what the laws of physics seem to imply. It's just a consequence of the laws of physics as we know them. And we can observe it happening. But it's not expanding on some deeper substrate. Space itself is the bottom substrate, so it's the space that's getting bigger. But the stuff in the space is not getting bigger. Did you know you sound like Jeff Goldblum? I'll take that as a compliment. Do we know if the universe's expansion is still accelerating? Maybe. At least recent data seems to say yes. How did 3i Alice change colors not once but twice? Well, depending on what kind of substances it's made out of, and depending on how it off-gasses those substances, the light that it gives off can change. What's your absolute favorite thing on Earth, about Earth? Well, it has people on it, and I like people. Do you believe in the fine-tuning theory? No, I don't. What do you think would happen to QFT if we proved the string theory graviton? QFT would still be very useful. Do you fear that physics will suffer due to state-mandated creationism in school? I hope not. But yes, if that happened, it would suffer. How do forces like gravity and magnetism attract or repel things when they're not even touching? So this question is sort of gets at the core of why the notion of a field was even conceived of. Because there is a question of like you have a thing with charge over here and a thing with charge over here. How do they affect each other if they're not touching each other? And the point is that they're not directly affecting each other. They're affecting a field, and that field is connecting them, essentially. That's the way that we view it. That's the way that we view these things today. What do you think of Blitzars for your community members? It's good. I don't know if it's right, though. Is it true that people stay up past midnight have mental illness? I don't think so. Who is your personal favorite physicist? What inspired you to pursue physics? Well, the goat of physics is Albert Einstein. What inspired me to pursue physics is just that I thought black holes were really rad. What's your favorite programming language? Well, I don't know if I have a favorite, but like the one that if I do have to program, it's almost always in Python because it's easy. Was that a pun? No, it wasn't a pun. It wasn't intentional anyway. What is the silly thing you learned or realized while studying? What is the silly thing that you learned or realized while studying physics? I don't know. I don't know if there's any silly things. Can you give an overview of the many worlds theorem? It's not a theorem, it's an interpretation. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics is merely that rather than having wave function collapse when a measurement is made, you have wave functions branching, essentially. The goat of physics is his wife, not Albert himself. May check the data. This is a myth that was propagated in like the 80s and 90s based off of like not first-hand information. It's just false. Like there's no data supporting that his wife was the brains behind relativity. Like it's a myth that we like to believe because we want to believe that, there is a woman behind this because, feminism is cool, but it's just not reality. It's not the world we live in, that his wife was behind relativity. How did you master calculus? I had a really good teacher. Can you explain what the field is? So there's a whole bunch of fields. There's an electromagnetic field, there's a gravitational field, and so on. But you can think of a field as well, look, a field is a mathematical thing. It's like we describe it mathematically. You can think of it as some quantity associated with every point in space. So a good example of a field would be temperature. Right, so the temperature on the Earth takes on a value everywhere on the surface of the Earth, and it could be different in different places. That's like a simple way to describe a field. Now, what a field actually is, in some sense, it's kind of like a fundamental thing. It's not like made of something smaller. It is a feature of our universe that affects types of matter. Can you explain for a high school student why we can't merge quantum and relativity theory? It's pretty hard to do, but essentially there's an algorithm or kind of like it's not really like a computational algorithm, but it's kind of like a set of techniques that we use to convert classical theories like electromagnetism into quantum theories, like quantum electrodynamics. There's like a set of rules and kind of like steps that we typically do to do that. And those rules work really well for classical electromagnetism, for the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, etc. It's called quantization. However, when you try to do that for general relativity, which is Einstein's theory of gravity, it fails. And so people have tried to come up with other ways to quantize gravity, and usually it ends up failing too. There is one attempt that hasn't quite failed yet, which is called loop quantum gravity. Maybe that way works. It's not clear though, because the math is really hard, basically. Does the idea of an invisible field push you to view the universe through a simulation lens? No, not at all. There are a lot of things that we can't see. I don't know why a field would be less believable than like a neutrino. Neutrinos, we can't see those. You mentioned wave function. Can you explain what you mean by that in a simple term? So a wave function is just a wave. It's just a wave, but it's just not in like water. A wave function is a wave, you might call it in like an abstract Hilbert space or something like this. It's like a mathematical kind of object, or perhaps it's kind of an object that is kind of a layer deeper than like space, time, and matter, and kind of describes what's happening in space, time, and matter. If the universe is flat, what happens if we had a spaceship and went up or down from Earth? It's not flat as in two-dimensional, it's flat as in not curved. Thoughts on the CTMU and Christopher Langan? Christopher Langan doesn't know really anything, and the CTMU is like philosophical rambling that's postmodernist, like a postmodernist metaphysics, basically. The average age of publishing something significant in physics has shifted from mid-20s in the early 20th century to mid-30s to 40s in the later half. Okay. What are your top 3 science fiction movies? Oh, I don't know. Does Pacific Rim count? Because that's got to be in there. I really liked the Blue People Avatar as well. I know it's a rehashing of an old story, but I still thought it was really beautiful, like really beautifully done. Does Spaceballs count? Maybe. I don't know. The Star Trek. Oh, I mean, maybe Star Trek. The Voyage Home is also like probably up there because that's just a brilliant movie. But that's just because I like Star Trek, not because the movie itself is like super, super good. Like the movie is good, but do you know Juan Maldacena? I've never met him in real life, but I'm familiar with his work, yeah. How do you articulate yourself and recall information so effortlessly? Oh, because I've been doing this for a long time. Are there any parts of physics that require uncountable sets? Sort of, insofar as a lot of physics assumes the universe is continuous, that it is kind of, that space is isomorphic to, say, the cube of the real line, which is uncountable. Where does the energy come from for the cosmological constant? Well, it's not clear that the cosmological constant exists, but if it does, it doesn't require energy. This is just a fact of our universe. Energy is not conserved if there is a cosmological constant. Is time a real physical dimension or just an emergent property of motion and entropy? So whenever people ask specific questions about time, whether it's real or whether it's emergent or whatever, you should always, always, always see if you can ask the exact same question about space. And if the answer is different between your answer for space and your answer for time, then that means that you're probably not thinking about something right, because time and space are intimately related. So I would say that time is as real as space is. You look so young. Well, I'm 32, so how did the interview go yesterday? I think it went pretty well. There were some things I wish I could have brought up that I forgot to, or that I didn't really have the chance to. But otherwise, I think it went pretty well. I did make some blunders, though. Like, I thought that the job started later than it did. So that indicated that I didn't closely read the job description. But who knows if they'll actually care about that. What math background do I need to study GR? Just finished special relativity in my physics class. So you're going to need linear algebra, certainly. You're going to need partial differential equations, certainly. You're going to need calculus, certainly. You're going to need And in principle, you can learn differential geometry while learning general relativity. That's what I did. However, the mathematics of general relativity is built on differential geometry. So if you know differential geometry ahead of time, you'll have a good time. Favorite formula? So in mathematics, it's probably Gauss's theorem of Grisham, which relates intrinsic curvature to extrinsic curvature, and that's really neat. On the other hand, in physics, it's probably the Einstein field equations, because they're so simple and yet you get so much out of them. Do you read fiction? I used to a lot. I just haven't in a long time because I just spend so much time reading other things now. Do we need manifolds to learn GR? Yes. Okay, $2 for the homework. How's that? What, $2? No, I don't answer homework questions. Is differential equations and partial differential equations that much harder than linear algebra? Differential equations, when they're linear can basically be simplified down to linear algebra. But yeah, I mean, like, they're more advanced topics, I would say. Linear algebra is so free. It is. Why was Einstein better than Newton? I'm not sure if Einstein was better. Einstein's contributions are probably they're more sophisticated than what Newton did, which of course, because he was building off of what Newton did and what other physicists did. But he kind of laid the groundwork in just a single year for basically like the entirety of modern physics. And then 10 years later, he laid the groundwork for the rest of it. So he's kind of the GOAT. Have you heard about no, I haven't heard about the game Abiotic Factor. By the way, I should quit and chill for myself really quick. So a few things. First, oh, hey, we have a new Patreon member, John Pringle. Thank you for becoming a $5 member. Now, this is a good segue because if you are a Patreon member or if you become a YouTube member on either of the two YouTube channels, you will gain access to my debate notes. Now, these are notes that I have written for myself. Basically, they're not really intended to be read by other people, but they're a set of notes that like kind of list out like a rough sketch of certain arguments, rough sketch of certain counter arguments, pieces of data, sources for different claims that I sometimes refer to when I'm doing any of my debates, like flat Earth debates or young Earth debates or atheism debates, whatever. I just have like a list of stuff that I can refer to if I need like a quick reference for, you know, like if somebody says, oh, what's the source that physicists don't think the universe had a beginning or whatever, I can just go look at my note page, go to the table of contents and just pull it up. So if you want access to those notes, you have to you'll have to either be any level of patron on Patreon or become a member on either of my YouTube channels. It's like $5 a month or something like this. So those are the options. Of course, you don't need to. But if you want access, and I do update them on the regular, then that's how you get it. Right. All right. Oh, and also join the Discord server. There is a Discord server. If you're 18 plus, you should join it. It's a cool place to be. Anyway, let's get back to answering some questions. Love your content. Were you ever religious or raised in a religious household? So, I mean, in a sense, I was raised in a very liberal, mildly religious household. I was bar mitzvahed, so I was raised in like a Reformed Jewish household. But it was never like shoved down my throat. Like I went to Sunday school as a kid. I went to Hebrew school as a teenager for my bar mitzvah. But like, you know, it was never really, there was never really any obligation like, oh, this is what's true. You have to believe this, X, Y, Z. Given that black holes got you into physics, have you had a chance to meet Kip Thorne? I haven't, but I'd like to. That would be pretty rad. Would be nice if scientists had more open skepticism. Scientists are some of the most skeptical people in the world. I sent $1,000, but you refused? Nobody sent me $1,000. I can assure you, I would be worshiping you if you sent me $1,000. I wouldn't be worshiping you, but I'd be very thankful. Do you know any examples of theoretical physics being used in practical applications? Yeah, so it depends on what you consider theoretical physics, right? So there are things called medical particle accelerators that are used for treating cancer, for example. And in some sense, like the way that we build particle accelerators, that comes from like theoretical physics. That's like particle physics, right? Now it's being applied and uses experimental physics as well, but like this is a thing, right? What's your opinion on if there's other life in the universe, both microscopic and complex life? I suspect microscopic life is actually pretty abundant. Complex life is a different question, hard to say, but I suspect it exists in the universe, yeah. Are you happy Zoran won in New York City? Yeah, he seems like he'll be a good mayor. Do you think philosophy is pointless? No, I think the philosophy can be valuable. Yeah, theoretical condensed matter physics is also applied. True, yeah, that's a good point. What's empty space made of and how does it interact with black holes? Empty space isn't made of anything. Empty space is, like, in some sense, we kind of expect space-time to be fundamental. Unless you think it's emergent, then there might be some deeper quantum thing going on. But, like, as far as we can tell, empty space is fundamental. Are you and Ian friends IRL? Well, we've never met in person because Ian lives on the other side of the country from where I live. But like, I would definitely hang out with Ian in real life. Like, Ian seems like a chill them. Do you have an interest in studying machine learning? No, not really. Why do you think we haven't found gravitons? Oh, because even if we were right about everything that we think about gravitons, we would still have no hope of detecting them with current tech because they would be so hard to detect because gravity is so weak. I thought there wasn't any empty space because of virtual particles. Virtual particles are not real, kind of implied by the name. They're not like real things. It's just a mathematical, kind of a mathematical trick used to understand particle collisions. Are you religious? No. Is there any difference between first fundamental form and the metric tensor? The first fundamental form is usually used to describe the induced metric on an embedded submanifold. So the first fundamental form agrees with the metric tensor on the induced submanifold. Well, anyone, how could empty space be emergent? Well, there's something called the ADS-CFT correspondence, which at least shows that one dimension of space is emergent via entanglement entropy of a quantum system. Now, whether or not that's true, it's a correspondence, it's not a theorem, it's kind of like a conjecture, if you will. But that's like a way that we can see it happening, that you don't need 3 dimensions of space to describe 3-dimensional space. Do you believe matter, gravity, light is interchangeable? You exchange light for matter, gravity for matter? No, they're not interchangeable. They're different things. What would happen if you stuck your head in a particle accelerator? This happened to a guy. In the Soviet Union, this happened to a guy. He basically had a line of scar tissue passing from, I want to say, his left eye back to the outside of his head. He, like, if you did like an MRI, you would just see like a line of scar tissue through his brain. He was eventually fine, actually. He ended up going, he went back to work eventually. He was a physicist and, you know, it would just fry a piece of his brain, like just a thin pencil line of his brain. Why do pop scientists use virtual particles in God debates to show something coming from nothing? Oh, I don't know. They shouldn't. What's your take on Carlo Rovelli's relational quantum mechanics? I'm not so familiar with it, but I probably should get familiar with it. Hey mate, have you heard of entropic gravity? Not only have I heard about it, I actually had a dream about it last night. Generally, my view is that it seems like it's contentious, and there are some who think that it's already been, falsified by looking at the way that gravity behaves for non-spherically symmetric systems. But it's, there's still some people who are fighting for it, who disagree. Did particle head guy get special powers? No, and he didn't even, I don't even know if he got workers comp. Like, this was at the tail end of the Soviet Union, and so he ended up like his healthcare, he had a really hard time getting his healthcare because things were closing down. He eventually ended up immigrating. No, he eventually was offered free treatment in the US because they wanted to study him and also give him treatment in return, but he rejected it. Yeah, so he I think is he still alive? What was his name? Anatoly Brigorsky. Yeah, he's still alive. He's 83. So doctors expected him to die, but he didn't. He survived. He was a grad student at the time, if I remember correctly. He completed his PhD and he continued working as a particle physicist. He completely lost hearing in the left ear, replaced by a form of tinnitus. The left half of his face became paralyzed due to the destruction of nerves. He was able to function well except for occasional complex partial seizures and rare tonic-clonic seizures. The paralyzed side of his face never aged. He continued to work as a physicist at the Institute for High Energy Physics, eventually becoming the experiment coordinator for the same particle accelerator by which he was injured. He applied unsuccessfully for disability status to receive free epilepsy medication. He showed interest in making himself available for study to Western researchers, but could not afford to leave Protvino, which is, I guess, where he lived. So, you know, it wasn't great. All right, we have $10 from Angelo Garuso. Do you have any theories on how science fiction gravity plating could work in the real world? Is it even possible? I don't think so. Like, this is just seems like it's not the kind of thing, like, it's there for sci-fi convenience, but, like, the only thing I could think of is just spinning the thing quickly so that you get centrifugal, a centrifugal effective gravitational force downward. By the way, if you want your question prioritized, the easiest way for me to see it is to send a a super chat, and then I'll prioritize your question. Did you lose an electron because you're positive AF? I appreciate that. Do you think it's possible to get a solid and deep understanding of math physics without a teacher? I mean, yeah, sure, it's possible. It's just hard. Do you know the TikTok atheist live streamer named Evidence First? If so, what do you think about him? I've never heard about him. Do you read a lot? If so, anything specific? I don't. I doom scroll a lot, and honestly, I work a lot. And by work, I mean I spend a lot of time doing research, and then I spend a lot of time writing scripts. And so, like, I read a lot of stuff. So I have my own research, like, for my own publications and stuff that I do. But also, I spend a lot of time reading papers that are not, like, directly my research for, like, scholarship, so that I can make more interesting videos. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing. Can you explain Newton's third law for a beginner? Yeah, Newton's third law is just that if you push on something and you're not moving, it's because the other thing is pushing back on you with the same force. The reason why a weight feels heavy is because it's pushing down on you, and so you have to push up on it. Equal and opposite. What do physicists even do? How do you get paid for, and how does that benefit anybody? Well, physicists kind of have two roles generally. One role is to teach, right? So physics is a study that essentially all engineers need. You have to know Newton's laws. You have to know how electromagnetism works. You have to know all of these things. So the people who are experts in those fields, physicists, the people who study physics for a living, those people are going to be the most effective teachers generally. So that's like half to a third of a physicist's job. The other half of a physicist's job is to advance scientific understanding. And I mean, think of it this way. The person who invented the blue LED was a physicist, right? And the research that he was doing was physics research. So it's the kind of downstream effects of doing physics research is generally stuff that ends up helping humanity. I mean, like, consider another great example is there was a time 70 years ago when perhaps we thought that particle colliders were not useless to anybody. They didn't help anybody. Particle colliders were just used for figuring out how particles work, particles behave, and that's not relevant for anybody's life. And now we use particle colliders to treat cancers. We literally take particle beams produced in particle accelerators, and then we shoot those beams at cancer to, like, kill tumors without damaging other tissue. So, like, there are downstream effects of basic scientific research, and that's what physicists do. It's a type of basic scientific research. Now we have $5 from Garain. In the distant future, do you think we will know everything and science will be obsolete? I kind of doubt it. I kind of think that there will probably always be more science to do. And from DRC with the 400, I think that these are Indian rupees. If one may define a LVS that has causality as a state change or linear vector space, okay, that has causality as a state change or linear transform without mentioning time, what if any would be its implication upon philosophy and logic? I don't really understand the question. Like, time would be so you'd have some parameter to describe this linear transformation. That parameter you could call time. I appreciate the 400 rupees though. Why Avilobe is doing this disinformation? Because probably to get more book sales is my guess. Do people actually think the Earth is flat? Unfortunately, they do. Lots of them. Is it possible to create a smokeless flame? Yeah, you just need a really clean burning fuel. Like if you just burned like isopropyl alcohol, you'll get like no smoke. From Comics Legion with the $5. Thank you so much. How do I prove that space exists without using videos against flat earthers? Please and thanks. Well, look, you can always be ultimately skeptical about anything. You'd be like, well, have you seen it in person? And then if you say no, then, you know, then they'll be like, well, then how do you know? You just believe what was taught to you in books. But like, look, we all believe things that haven't seen personally. Like, I haven't been to Australia, but I believe that Australia exists. Essentially, what you can say is, look, there is stuff in the sky that we can see. We can see the International Space Station, or at least something that we call the International Space Station, with our eyeballs. We can see it pass overhead. And so then you just have to ask, where is it? How many miles up is it? How fast is it moving? And they won't really be able to answer these kinds of questions. It's moving far too fast to be something that is just like on a balloon. It's moving far too fast to be an airplane. And if it was moving that fast still in the atmosphere, it would burst into flames. And so it seems like you have this thing that's moving across the sky. It moves across the sky in seconds, by the way. It just zips across. It's moving too fast to be anything in an atmosphere, and it's up in the sky, which means that there is a place that has no atmosphere high up in the sky. That's what we call space. Now, another $10 from Angelo Garuso. Thank you. So generous. What is the theoretical limit on how much energy could be stored in a single battery? Ignoring the chemistry problem, is there a physical limit to how much energy could be stored in a single place? Yeah, I guess. The limit is like a black hole. So energy contributes to the mass of a thing. Energy gravitates, right? And so what this means is that if you put enough energy in a single place, the mass of that place will increase so much that it'll gravitate and eventually collapse into a black hole. So yeah, that would be the upper limit. It'd be the most dense battery you can get, and you could actually use such a black hole as a battery if you wanted to. Oh no. Don't tell me that my prescription is delayed again. It's the most frustrating thing. So annoying. How does Super Chat? Yeah, so Super Chat is only available on YouTube. However, if you want to support me and ask a question, you can also send a Cash App. I get more of the percentage of that anyway. What is the smallest black hole we've observed? I don't know offhand. I could look it up for you, but my guess is it's a few solar masses, so it's a few times the mass of the sun would be my guess. What's the purpose of a physics with algebra course? To still teach you some ideas of physics, even if you can't get to the meat, which requires calculus. Dingo's Life with the 10 Australian dollars, 10 Aussie dollary dues. Why does core fusion in stars of solar mass greater than 10 solar masses cease at nickel 56 as opposed to stopping at a stable nickel 62? It's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I could speculate. The question is it true that if you added an alpha particle to nickel 56, would it release energy? Right? Is it exothermic? I kind of suspect not. We could go look at the binding energy per nucleon graph, and we can see. I just want like a high-res one that has all of the yeah, so it looks like iron 56 has like, it's not showing me everything. Where's nickel? Because I know that nickel actually is more stable. Here we go. Yeah, so it looks like if you have nickel 50, I don't think that you can, are you talking about iron 56? So it is true that iron 56, yeah, I think that you probably meant iron 56, but you can, so there is some nickel. You will get nickel in black holes. It's just once you get to iron 56, the binding energy, when you add an alpha particle, that would take you to nickel 60, which has less binding energy. Now, if you had iron 58, then you could add an alpha particle and get something slightly more stable at nickel 62. But I suspect it's just because iron 56 is probably easier to get to. It's probably more abundant in the stars, so you end up with more iron than you do with nickel. That'd be my guess, though. I don't know offhand. And Didark with the $2, why do you subscribe to the many worlds interpretation? So the many worlds interpretation is in some sense kind of like the bare minimum version of quantum mechanics. If you just take the Schrodinger interpretation seriously and don't add anything else aside from the Born rule, then you end up with the Schrodinger equation. Now, if you then go on to say that, there is this phenomenon called wave function collapse as well, then yeah, then you're adding more to your theory of quantum mechanics. And so it just seems like it's like Occam's razor should say that you should actually not do that if you can avoid it. So that's why it's basically the simplest version of quantum mechanics. And Villain sends sunglasses. Thank you so much, Villain. What section should you avoid if you're reading a 1990s introductory astronomy textbook? Probably avoid the, well, I guess it depends on what's in the textbook, but my guess is that you would want to avoid the stuff that says the long, like whatever the section is on the long-term future of the universe, because it's probably wrong. How is electron capture possible if Heisenberg uncertainty principle doesn't allow electrons to get near the nucleus? It does. Electrons can overlap with the nucleus. There's no issue there. Is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle just a technological limitation? It's absolutely not. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is a real thing. It has nothing to do with tech. It has to do entirely with the way that we describe quantum systems in terms of waves. And another $2 from Comics Legion. Can you describe your debate with Angel and Nathan? It was a show in education, is what it was. How could one visualize square root of -1? Well, you have the real numbers going across. Square root of -1 points up. Do you have a Patreon? I do have a Patreon. In fact, there is a new feature for every level of the Patreon, which is if you are a Patreon subscriber, or Patreon patron or whatever, you now get access to my debate notes. There are notes that I use during debates. They have resources. They have some summaries of arguments and some summaries of counter-arguments. And, it has like various articles that I can reference as sources for any claims that I make. So you can kind of use it as like, it's not like it's not like a dialogue tree, but it just has like some good references that you can use if you need to back any of the claims up that you're making. And so if you're a Patreon, you get access to that. Also, if you're a member on YouTube, you also get access to that. Now, just as one extra aside, if any of you are like wildly independently wealthy, there's also a way that you can actually support my scholarly research on Patreon, which is a wildly expensive monthly subscription. And if you do, you will get personal acknowledgments, like named acknowledgments in all of my publications that I work on while you subscribe or while you're a medieval patron. So that's an option if anybody's wildly independently wealthy. Is topology or Riemann geometry applicable to physics or engineering? Absolutely, it's applicable to physics. I use it all the time. In some sense, I actually like publish in Riemannian geometry journals as well, or yeah, you could say that. I don't know how useful these things are in engineering, but I'm not an engineer, so I just don't know. Why aren't quaternions used more often in physics? They're awesome. They are. It's just we have kind of more general ways of talking about these things now, but they do show up. Where'd you go to school? I'm not telling you. What's your opinion on the life of Nikola Tesla? Where do you think we would be now? Nikola Tesla was a great inventor, but that's about it. What are journals? How can one publish in them? Well, so journals are where academic and scholarly papers are submitted to. So you write up some new discovery that you made, or you write up some new theorem that you've proven, whatever it is, and then you can submit it to a journal. A journal is like a collection of papers, and it has editors, it has reviewers, and then if the editors think that it's a reasonable paper for their journal, like if it's the right topic or whatever, they will pass it along to some expert in the field to have the paper reviewed, to have it refereed, and if the referee says, oh yeah, everything's fine in here, then they'll publish it, and it'll appear published. This is what peer review is. In this context, that peer review happens. Help me out, man. Which should I study first, Physics 1 or Gen Chem? Physics 1 will not really help you with Gen Chem, unfortunately. Just Physics 1 is like mechanics, and that's not really chemistry. Why can't two bosons interact? They can. For example, photons could, in principle, interact with, well, okay. Yeah, so I guess photons could in principle interact with W or Z bosons because they're charged. What journals have been politically bought? As far as I know, none in my field. Where would you think we would be if we continued Nikola Tesla's work with him involved? I don't think that we'd be anywhere special. From Tim for Pele, can you shed some, with $5, by the way, thank you. Could you shed some light on Christoffel symbols and metric connections in general? Yeah, so Christoffel symbols are merely, so okay. I should back up. So a connection, there's a lot to say here. A connection is a way of describing how to take a vector here and move it to a vector there. That's all it is, right? That's all it's there for. It's a way of connecting the the tangent space at a point to a tangent space at another point. Because, in principle, you could imagine that the tangent space twists as you move around, and so you have to twist your vectors as you move them around, whatever it is. Now, what a metric connection does is it allows you to preserve angles when you move two vectors. If you take two vectors from here, it preserves angles and lengths. So if you take two vectors here, and then you want to move them over here, it makes sure that like their relative angles and relative lengths stay the same, as long as they're parallel transported. And the Christoffel symbols are just the formulaic symbols in terms of coordinates. So you describe the metric tensor in terms of coordinates. The Christoffel symbols are just the formulas that for the connection that allow you to do that allow you to produce a metric connection that's also torsion-free. Torsion-free is good because it means that essentially, as you parallel transport something, a vector doesn't twist as you go along a path. Nicola died a lonely man defunded for personal benefits. I would have valued a lengthy response. He just wasn't that special. He was a really brilliant engineer who kind of went off the deep end. Sorry, he was a really brilliant inventor, I should say. But yeah, he wasn't like some super genius. He wasn't some guy that was going to change the world forever. He has like a few patents to his name that are actually still in use today. What's your favorite hadron and why? I'm quite fond of protons because they make up most things, right? Who's your favorite physicist? It's got to be the GOAT, Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, he was just, he was the GOAT. What can I say? Do you have any good recs for science podcasts? I don't really listen to podcasts, so not really. By the way, y'all, make sure to like the live, whether you're on TikTok or YouTube. It gets more people in here. And more people means, better questions, generally. Is it possible to be able to ride light waves? No. Einstein invented lasers. Well, he didn't invent lasers. Those were invented in the 50s, I want to say. But his work allowed for the invention of lasers, basically. Is it possible that the universe wraps backwards back onto itself, creating a sphere? Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's the thing. Do you think Einstein's wife did some of his work he claims as his own? No, this has been debunked. It's just not true. What's the difference between nothing and empty space? Well, one would expect, it depends on what you mean by nothing, I guess. Like the philosophical notion of nothing, you wouldn't expect to have any properties, and empty space still has properties, right? So it's hard to say. What is our level of certainty of the Big Bang being accurate? It depends on what you mean by, I should get rid of this. It depends on what you mean by the Big Bang. Generally, we have the consensus is like the vast majority of people who are involved in this science, these cosmologists, agree that the Big Bang happened. Now, whether that means it's the beginning of the universe, that's a different story. When the Big Bang happens, there's, some very, very minor disagreement about when this happens. You'll have some very, very fringe people who think that it happened, like, however many, like, longer ago or less time ago. But yeah, I mean, like, there is overwhelming consensus that this is absolutely a thing that happened. It's unlikely based on our observations that the universe isn't flat, but we could be wrong. Yeah, that's true. I was talking to like the physical possibility of it being the case. Is the nothing in the never-ending story the conception of a black hole? No, I don't think so. What's the difference between spin and polarization for quantum particles? So all particles you can describe as waves. And waves can oscillate in different directions, but when we're talking about particles with mass, generally, the polarization is like polarization and helicity. These things are related to each other, and this is basically what direction the thing's spin is pointing in. So a thing can have spin 1/2, but its spin can be pointing in different directions. Basically. Do a collab with Kyle Hill. That'd be cool. I was actually supposed to play a game of Magic the Gathering with him a while ago, but he never got back to us. So How would atom fusing binding work in a quantum aspect? Would the waves just override each other? Yeah, so essentially you take say an alpha particle, which is the nucleus of a helium atom, and if you put it next to another alpha particle, if their wave functions, which you can describe the alpha particles with wave functions, if their wave functions get close enough, then the strong nuclear attraction between them can bind them together. But if they're not close enough, then the electrostatic repulsion, they're both positively charged, will push them apart. So you really got to overcome that pushing apart to get them close enough so that they can actually stick. Do you think that the neutrino wall will ever be mapped, the one similar to the CMB? Possibly. People are working on it, but it's really hard to detect. Einstein, it wouldn't have been possible without Clerk-Maxwell. Yeah, absolutely. Einstein's work builds off of the electromagnetism that James Clerk-Maxwell laid out. Did you study any astrophysics in your PhD? No, I didn't. And do you think astrophysics or general physics is more useful to learn? It just depends on what you want to do. Does the Big Bang repeat itself over and over again? Genuine question. Thanks for responding. We don't know. So I think the correct stance is to be agnostic here. How do you know a smallest thing can independently exist and not have something smaller? I don't know that. Is Kyle Hill good? I didn't know of him. I used to watch his stuff a lot. I haven't watched his stuff in like a few years, so I can't comment. Maybe he's like gone off the deep end. But yeah, I used to watch his stuff a lot, and he was very good. Is the universe infinite or infinitely expanding? It can be both. It can be expanding and also be infinite. Those are not mutually exclusive. How can we see light from distant galaxies if space is spreading faster between us? Well, if space between us and a distant galaxy is expanding, if that distance is growing faster than the speed of light, then we will never see light from them again. But we could see light from them in the past because they were closer, and hence the space was growing less quickly. Is becoming a physicist still possible today, since I imagine it is extremely competitive, not needed? I don't know if I would say that it's not needed. It is very competitive, though. That's definitely true. Which interpretation of quantum mechanics do you think is true? I lean towards the many worlds interpretation. Are you only answering questions in chat? Yes. Do you think Newton could outbox Einstein? No, Newton was like an incel loner who never left his room. This is much more refreshing than the idiots who just argue political differences. Well, I mean, look, that everybody has their opinion about things. What do you think of the work of David Bohm? I haven't read it in its entirety. I am mildly familiar with Bohmian mechanics, which I think is neat. I'm not sure how compelled I am by it. What's your favorite cookie? I like chocolate chip. Ever read about object-oriented ontology? I haven't. Can galaxies travel faster than light? So the thing is, the way that you can talk about the speed of light in general relativity is you can only compare speeds. You can only meaningfully compare speeds for two things that are nearby each other. So if something is very, very far away from you, then from your perspective, it's possible that it could be moving faster than light. But it's never actually, but from its perspective, light will always be moving faster than it. Do you have a favorite physics fact or something you wish more people knew? I wish more people knew. What do I wish more people knew? I wish more people knew that we actually understand quantum mechanics pretty well. Did you fail exams in uni? Because I'm kind of scared. I failed one exam, and then I withdrew from the course. But, you know, I probably shouldn't have been taking that class. Slim Starcraft with the 8 Aussie bucks. Will you ever do debates like this with conspiracy theorists that believe we never went to the moon? I found it's one of the most common conspiracies. I have in the past. It's just a very narrow conspiracy. And so those kinds of conversations end up showing up when I talk with flat earthers, for example. But yeah, it's definitely something I've considered doing. Maybe I'll add it to my list of things. But currently I have 3 topics that I do, and those topics seem to do all right. How much are atoms involved in physics? A lot, like so much. Why does physics progress so quickly, but morality of society doesn't? Well, they just seem like they're unrelated to each other. Are you bullish on America having an outpost on Mars or the moon? Oh, I don't know. I haven't really thought too much about it, to be honest. It is flat, prove me wrong. Okay, tune in for the next live stream. I'll do a, you can join in me for a debate and we can talk about it. From Edward, with the €5, how can a Planck unit of time exist if time is relative? a Planck unit of time isn't like a pixel necessarily. It's not like a pixel for units of time. Planck units aren't pixels. They're just the limit at which, like, if you get slower, if you try to measure something on a scale smaller than like the Planck length or a duration shorter than the Planck time, then it'll collapse into a black hole. But it's not like a pixel. It can still be relative. There's no issue there. When will you do the next Flurf Live? Probably tomorrow or Friday. What's the hardest course you've ever taken? So when I was a freshman, when I was an undergrad, freshman undergrad, 18-year-old Blitz, I enrolled in a topology course, a upper division at the university I was at. You know, first year courses were 100 level, second year courses were 200 level. I enrolled in a 400 level topology course because the only prereqs, well, it didn't have any prereqs, and it had one co-requisite, which was a proofs-based mathematics class. So like an introduction to proofs, if you will, which I was taking at the time, and I was doing fine in it. But I was just not ready for the mathematical maturity. I didn't have the mathematical maturity required to do a 400 level mathematics course on topology. Even though technically it only had that as a co-req, I was just not ready for it. So I flunked the midterm and I ended up withdrawing from the class. It's the only exam I've ever failed. Dr. Blitz, would you be able to get Monkey Boy on the podcast with you, Justin, and Ian? We already have 3. We often need people to fill in when one of us is absent. And so I haven't talked to Monkey Boy about this, but I'd be open to having him replace Ian when Ian can't be present. But generally, we all try to be there. What is your favorite scientific discipline or topic outside of physics? Does mathematics count? Because if it's mathematics, then it's mathematics. Do you think eventually the universe will stop expanding? Don't know how far you've researched this. I think it's possible. I think that we have to be open to that possibility. Does the equation E equals mc squared apply to a black hole? Sure. What's your debate schedule? So I do debates on Monday, Thursday, Friday. And then I also do the Unapologetic show on Sundays. What are the ethical issues in physics, if there are any? There aren't really many, because we don't really interact with like living things very often. So there's not really a whole lot of ethical issues. How was my interview yesterday? I think it went all right. There were a few things I wish I could have mentioned, and one big oof where I made the mistake of thinking that the job started in next September, but it actually starts this January, which shows that I didn't read the job posting very carefully. But, you know, I think it went generally pretty well. I didn't seem too nervous, I don't think. Did you watch the first episode of Gutsick teaching evolution to Will Duffy? No, I didn't. What do you think of the hypothesis of a slow rotating universe that conciliates the Hubble tension? I've heard about this. I haven't heard much about it since the first paper came out. So maybe it's just not so, maybe people have like kind of thought about it more. Maybe it's just not taken seriously. I haven't thought about it in a while though. What was the job about? Oh, it's a visiting assistant professorship. Do you think the universe is comprised of more than 4 dimensions, such as things like string theory? I would say we should assume no until we have evidence otherwise. Who are physicists you look up to? Roger Penrose is like a big one. He's still alive. Stephen Hawking, Albert Einstein. Basically like Roy Kerr to a certain extent. Herman Bondi. A lot of like there were like a lot of kind of like the big shots during the golden age of relativity. These were guys that I would definitely look up to. How much time has passed since the Big Bang? About 13.8 billion years according to our current models. Isn't rotation relative to there being other things? So what we would say is that it's rotating, meaning that there's like an overall like the galaxies are spinning in an overall preferred direction. Do you lean towards an eternal universe or a finite universe? I kind of lean towards an eternal one, but like it's maybe 60-40. It's not like that strong of a position. How long does it take you, Dr. Blitz, to create one of your physics videos? It depends on the video. Things that I know off the top of my head, I can write a script for that in half an hour, and then because I don't have to do any like pre-reading or anything, and then it takes about 15 minutes to film, then another hour to edit. So a bit less than 2 hours. However, if it's about a topic that I'm less confident in, I'm still familiar with it, but I like need more details, then it will often take me like, you know, an hour or two of reading beforehand before I can even start writing a script. Brenda Lee, thank you for sending me the star map Polaris. I appreciate that a lot. Where do you think physics is most useful outside of studying like different sports or jobs? It's most useful as a physicist, right? If you're doing physics, it's very useful in physics. But like, if you're asking like outside of, like it's useful in medicine, like there are medical physicists who like do radiation therapy. It's useful in engineering, where basically everything that they do is applied physics. So yeah, there's a lot. Could a particle collider create a stargate or wormhole? Not as far as we can tell. Are you or have you ever been into any video games? Yeah, I've been a gamer since I remember. But currently I'm playing Overwatch, I'm playing Battlefield 6. I played CS2 for like the second time in my life yesterday and it went horribly. What else am I playing? Yeah, those are the games that I'm playing right now. Battlefield 6 and Overwatch mostly. Do you believe Bob Lazar? No, man is a hack. And Brenda Lee sends a journal, which for another 300 gems. Thank you. Do you still play RuneScape? No, I haven't played RuneScape in a while, but it still holds a soft place in my heart because I have like thousands of hours. I have hundreds of days worth of playtime in the game. Jonathan with the $5 just sends $5 just because Jonathan likes me. Appreciate you. How confident are we in the singularity? To my knowledge, we can't ever observe it directly, and it is possible that the physical infinity... Yeah, so we're not confident in singularities existing at all. This is not a thing that anybody's confident in. Who is your Overwatch main? So when I play DPS, I'm primarily a DPS player. I have most of my time in Overwatch 2 is on Mei. Most of my time in Overwatch 1 is on Widowmaker. I've been playing Overwatch basically since release. However, lately I've been playing a lot of Zenyatta and Stadium, and that's really fun. Do you lean towards free will or determinism? I lean towards determinism. Do you drink tequila? Not really. Marvel Rivals main? Magic. I haven't played Magic in a while, though. You're working with the three bros who made RuneScape? That's cool. What are their names? One of them is Andrew. Started with a G. Andrew Gowers, right? There's Andrew Gowers, and then there's the Gowers brothers. Based. Yeah, no, I played RuneScape from 2002 all the way up. Like, I canceled my membership like 2 years ago. So I maxed and then I canceled. Polynesian, that's right. Please give Ears, so Slickleg sends $2 for please give Ears Raiders a try peak game. I don't know what that is. I don't know what Ears Raiders is. Hours in Baldur's Gate? Let me check. Let me open up Steam. It's probably like a few hundred is my guess. Baldur's Gate. 366 hours. Arc Raiders. I still don't know what that is. What are some good labs or companies for entry-level R&D internship, please? I don't know. I've never done any of them. You have to give Arc Raiders a try peak game. What is it? I don't know what it is. What's your favorite theorem in all of mathematics? Probably Gauss's Theorem of Gresham. It's just beautiful. It relates intrinsic and extrinsic geometry. My $5 was your reward for playing Battlefield 6. Yeah, no, it's been a good time. I only have like 15 hours in it so far, but it's been a good time. Would you ever consider becoming a professor? I mean, yes, that's been kind of the goal. Where do we donate for prompt to appear? Oh, so that's through YouTube. However, you can also send me a Cash App, and I will also see it, but I won't see it as immediately. Yeah, so YouTube Super Chats is what is the place to go if you want to prioritize your question. What's the usefulness of different signatures like plus, minus, 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 or minus, plus, plus, plus? It's just convention. One's not more useful than the other. However, if you do plus, minus, 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 then you run into issues like lengths become negative, and that's really weird. So I prefer minus, plus, plus, plus. That's the relativists' convention. I think plus, minus, minus, minus is what particle physicists often use, but why is quantum gravity hard to prove? Because the mathematics just doesn't work when we try to do the normal thing. There's like a normal procedure that we use to convert a classical theory to a quantum theory, and it just doesn't work for gravity. Please tell me something about 3I Atlas. It's a comet. It's an interstellar comet, but it's a comet. All right, Slickleg, again with the $5. Arc Raiders is a third-person PvPvE extraction shooter, which is cross-platform. If I have friends who are playing it and they convince me to play it, I will. Otherwise, I probably won't. But I appreciate all of the information. Is Ian wrong about moral objectivity? I have some contentions with the argument that Ian presents, but I understand the argument. I think it's a pretty good argument generally. Why is gravity not an emergent property of electrostatics? Oh, because they're just not related to each other. Like, electrostatics just can't account for all of the features that we observe gravitationally. Are there mods in the chat? Well, I'm kind of looking at the chat, so I can mute stuff if necessary. Do you like to travel? If so, where? To an extent. I like to travel with my wife. She's a really good travel buddy. I don't love traveling with other people, but my wife and I, when we travel together, it's a good time. Do you think consciousness is emergent or fundamental? I think it's emergent. Could you help me understand the property of spin better? I appreciate it. So spin is just intrinsic angular momentum. That's it. Like, things have intrinsic mass, or at least things can have intrinsic mass. Things can have intrinsic charge. There's no reason why things couldn't have intrinsic angular momentum, right? They just do. What is G-force? Sorry, my nose is itchy. I feel like I have to sneeze. Nope, it's not coming. Okay, G-force is just a way of characterizing the acceleration that somebody feels in terms of, so when you're falling, you are accelerating down towards the ground at around 10 meters per second squared. So we just say 1G is equal to 10 meters per second squared. And if you're experiencing some acceleration in another direction of 30 meters per second squared, we would say that you're accelerating at 3 Gs. C-Bar sends $5. Why is Mormonism the best? Because you can have your cake and eat it too. That's in bad taste, C-Bar. It's fine though. Grimlock sends $10. He's been busy AF, so missed most of the stream, but not this donation. Also, hydration. I don't know where my water bottle is, so I'm not going to hydrate yet, but I promise I will afterwards. Paco. Oh, that's for another thing. Never mind. I'll have to go look for my water bottle. It's got to be somewhere, but I just don't know where. But I'll hydrate after the live stream's over, which it'll be over soonish. At what age did you start loving physics? I was like 8 or something like this. So, could you please explain how quantum computing works? I don't understand because of decoherence. Quantum computing basically works by staving off decoherence as long as you possibly can. Is it correct to say that a force exerted due to a physical collision is, in terms of fundamental forces, an electromagnetic force? Sorry if that's not well formulated. Yeah, that's basically it. Has being a physicist shown evidence that Jesus Christ is Lord? No, it hasn't. You said electromagnetism and gravity are unrelated. Do you believe in a grand unified theory? Plausibly. But then electromagnetism wouldn't be the cause of gravity. And you're talking about a theory of everything, not a grand unified theory. But electromagnetism wouldn't be the cause of gravity. It's just that both of those things would emerge from something more fundamental. So it wouldn't be like electrostatics is involved with gravity, right? Have you seen Professor Jung take on evolution? It was really bad. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm just not a biologist, so I'm not going to make a video doing that. Do you reread your college notes? I don't have my college notes. Like, I wish I did, but I don't. Me looking at my 8-year-old like, so how do you feel about particles? I think particles are pretty cool. What's the most plausible theory on what dark energy and dark matter are? The most plausible theory for dark matter is that it's like a particle. It's a type of particle that we just haven't detected yet. I don't know what the most plausible theory on dark energy is. It used to be, prior to like 3 years ago, it used to be that the most plausible theory was that it's a cosmological constant, but that doesn't seem to be the most plausible anymore. If not a physicist, what would you be? A mathematician, but that's just because I kind of already am. What are gravitational waves? I thought gravity was just our interpretation of curved spacetime. Yeah, so if spacetime can curve, then spacetime can oscillate. And so these are fluctuations in spacetime that propagate. As being a physicist, do you personally believe he is? No, I don't believe that Jesus is divine or anything like that. Jesus was divine. No, I don't believe that. Not in the slightest. Does the accelerated expansion of the universe imply that energy is non-zero? Does that then imply that the universe is eternal or time is defined for all R in R via the quantum eternity theorem? No, not necessarily. So the point is we say energy, but what we really mean is what is the right hand side of the Wheeler-DeWitt Hamilton, or the Wheeler-DeWitt Hamiltonian constraint. So this is really a question of the way that the universe behaves quantumly, like on a quantum gravity scale. So if our universe is holographic, like similar to the ADS, like the ADS-CFT correspondence, then there is some well-defined notion of time. There is some well-defined notion of a Hamiltonian, in which case you would expect that the universe is eternal via the quantum eternity theorem. On the other hand, if the energy is zero, which could be the case whether the universe is accelerating in expansion or not, if the energy is zero, then all that means is that the right-hand side of the Hamiltonian, or the Wheeler-DeWitt Hamiltonian constraint, is zero. And so at this point, we don't really have any evidence saying one way or the other. From Hilario Santiago, with the $5, any study tips for exams? Medical school has kicked my butt. I'm not a medical doctor. I also didn't really study much outside of, I just didn't really study much. So unfortunately, I can't really help you. I would say that it's probably best to do your homework assignments, and if you don't understand them, do them again until you do. But I don't know how medical school works, so apologies if that's not so helpful. Do you like being very knowledgeable in a very niche field? I mean, yeah. I've heard electrons have spin, but they don't actually spin. What does spin represent then? Spin represents intrinsic angular momentum. That's it. Is there another side to a black hole? Does it go somewhere? Not that we have evidence for. And I'm generally of the view that there is no other side. You just end up in the middle and then you die. Or maybe you died earlier. Can you explain how Andrew Wiles proved Fermat's theorem? No, because I don't understand it. Do you think spacetime is fundamentally continuous or discrete? I'm pretty agnostic about it. Yeah, I'm pretty agnostic about it. I honestly don't have a strong, I've written a paper that kind of assumes that it's discrete, but I've also heard good arguments for it being continuous, so. Garain with the $5 asks, if the universe static or contracting, would that impact what we observe of entropy? Plausibly. It really depends on how the universe behaves. It could be the case that there is a sense in which the universe contracting would lead to entropy increase. However, there's another way that you could have the universe contracting that leads to entropy decrease. So it really just depends on what's going on in the universe, right? Yo, ever want to become a professor? Yeah, sure. I applied to some professor jobs. Weren't the TA that failed that whole class? No, I wasn't a TA. I was the instructor for the class. And no, I didn't fail a whole class. I failed 10 students out of 180 or so. So yeah, it was 10 students out of 180 who failed, and they failed because they repeatedly cheated in my class. Why wouldn't I fail them? That's the negative consequence if you get caught cheating, right? Stuck in a room with Darth or Q-Top? Choose. Oh, Darth. I would feel safer being in a room with Darth than Q-Top, because at least Darth doesn't, well, I'm not going to go any further. But Q-Top has some particular views about children. How much do you read a day? It really depends on the day. Most of the time, I'm very often reading physics papers or math papers. Maybe the equivalent of like 5 or 10 pages a day, but that takes a long time when you're reading academic papers. Oh, no, I don't blame myself for failing them. I'm not like, oh, I'm so distraught for failing them. Like, no, they deserved it. Why can't something with mass go light speed? Is there a mass versus speed budget, so to speak? I mean, essentially, you can calculate how much energy it takes to increase your speed by a certain amount. And what you'll find is the faster you go, the more energy it takes. So it would take an infinite amount of energy to get up to light speed, and there just isn't that much. Did you teach online classes? Is it much worse for the students learning? So I did teach some online classes during COVID. I don't know. The averages of the classes that I taught during COVID were not like significantly different than the averages of the classes that I taught before COVID. But I imagine that it is much worse now with AI especially. Can we harvest solar energy in space and return to Earth viably? People have thought about this using basically lasers, like you have giant solar panels in space and then they basically shoot microwave lasers down to the Earth to collect in an area. And yeah, that's perhaps like a good way to do it. How good at math do you have to be to understand Andrew Wiles' proof? It's not a matter of being good at math. It's a matter of like being in that area, right? So he was like an algebraic, like an analytic number theorist or something like this, and that's just not my area of mathematics. Why isn't light speed faster? Because if it was, then you would ask the same question. Does reading out transcript of your previous Ask a Physicist live beneficial? I don't know what that means. How old are you? I'm 32. Do you regret something career-wise? Not really. How could a timeless state of affairs change? It wouldn't. But if you're okay with a timeless state of affairs, then you should probably be thinking about things in the B theory of time way, in which case change is not the progression of events, if you will. Change is like a description of differences between time-like moments. And if there's a timeless state of affairs, there's no reason why there couldn't elsewhere in the space-time be like a time-full state of affairs. And they just all exist. Favorite math class outside of differential geometry? So when I was an undergrad, I really enjoyed my abstract algebra, like Galois theory class, and my number theory class, because I had an excellent professor for both of them. How does time dilation work if the person moving relative to us views us moving relative to them? So time dilation happens to both parties. However, if one party eventually turns around and returns, during that acceleration, during the period where they're stopping moving in one direction and starting moving in the other direction, they will see that the other person's clock speeds up a lot. And so the point is the one who does the acceleration is the one that changes the one that experiences the slower time. And that's the symmetry breaker. Where would you like to be in 5 years in time regards to your career? I'd like to be a tenure track professor at a university. Who knows if I will be? Or maybe the social media stuff will take off and I'll be able to provide for myself solely this way without worry about a future career. Is there decent money in being a physicist? If you can get an academic job being a physicist, then you're going to make, you will be comfortably middle class. If you work in industry being a physicist, you will be comfortably middle or upper middle class. How come the 3i Atlas doesn't have iron? I think it has lots of iron, doesn't it? Got a PhD and still has hope in the university system, couldn't be me. Look, I loved my PhD, it was great. What area of mathematics or physics is your forte? So I do differential geometry and relativity. Why is the universe expanding faster and not at a constant speed? The typical answer is dark energy. Whatever dark energy might be, it is the explanation for that. Is gravity made of anything like a particle, or is it just a force? Gravity is like a phenomenon, right? The same way that like electromagnetism is like a phenomenon. Now we can say that that phenomenon can like cause forces, but it wouldn't really make sense to say it's made out of anything. Are there any physicist challenges that you'd see be solved by AI? Not really. Have you seen successful good students struggle at their quizzes and exams in University Physics 1, even though they understand the material and math well? They make stupid little algebra mistakes. It doesn't happen often. It does happen occasionally, but the thing is if you have a good professor or a good grader, algebra mistakes will not be large contributing factors to the grades of an exam, right? Like whenever I was grading exams, like in Physics 1 or Physics 2 or whatever, if somebody made an algebra mistake, I'd dock off like a point or two. But if they understood what was happening here, then it's just an algebra error. Like that happens to everybody. In fact, it's a reason why I use a computer for most of my calculations, because I make algebra errors all the time. Like I would often get marked, like I did really, really well in university, but like the points that I would lose on physics exams or like math, or on physics exams primarily, and like, you know, lower division courses, it was because I was making algebra mistakes. I was working too fast. I wasn't checking my work. It happens. It happens to everybody. Does making a research paper mean discovering something? To an extent, yeah. Or it could mean proving something, or it could mean proving something wrong. It's just some novel piece of information. Fear's interaction with the $5. Will you still go by Dr. Blitz when you get to the Sean Carroll level of fame or notoriety? Who knows? Who knows? I don't even know if that'll ever happen. Sean Carroll is very good. Who knows if, but we'll see. I mean, like, okay, so Destiny has some like really problematic things, but just as an example, there's a guy on YouTube whose name is Stephen Bonnell, and his screen name has been Destiny. And even though he like has been on like mainstream media and stuff, like on the news, he still goes by Destiny. Like he has like full-fledged adults calling him Destiny, because that's just the name that he's gotten famous with. So it's just kind of interesting that's just like how it is, right? Is the Big Bang ever going to happen again? I don't know. Maybe. What is the easiest subject area of physics generally considered to be? I don't think that any area is generally considered to be easy. What do you think about his takes? I don't want to get into that. But he also has some like weird allegations against him that like, I don't know what's going on there. But I'm not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Where is the best way to study physics except the college? The college is the best way, right? Is there any physics behind Destiny? Is there? Oh wait, no. You mean like fate? Is there some rule or laws that regulate one's destiny, and can we change it? Well, look, the laws of physics govern how everything in the universe behaves. That's just how the world is. If you had to guess, where does the neutrino mass come from? I have no idea. I haven't spent any time thinking about it, but I know that it's a problem. Are there any theories besides Big Bang or loop quantum gravity to explain the origin? There's so many different models. Is there any plausibility to the cyclic universe theory? I mean, these are things that people take seriously and people write papers about, yeah. Daniel sends $5. If all the laws of physics are time symmetric, then what actually causes the arrow of time? It's a good question. I made a video about it recently. We basically don't know at this point. Like, generally the consensus is that it has something to do with entropy, something to do with thermodynamics, but we just don't really know. Would you say that physics also governs our mental states? Yeah. Going off the Big Bang, does light essentially not come from the darkness? I don't know what that means. Like, light is a phenomenon. It's an electromagnetic phenomenon, and it comes when charged things move around, you produce light. Now, was there a time where there was no light? I mean, in principle, yeah. And then charged things began existing, and so light started to exist. Is garlic bread our purpose in life? Yes. Yep, confirmed. Have any of the interstellar visitors to our solar system truly broken the laws of physics? No. Did you have a lot of tabs open during your PhD? Did it harm your productivity? Oh, I have a lot of tabs open now. It's actually like I've now organized them into folders, but yeah, I probably have like 70 tabs open right now. And there was a time when I had way more than that. But my computer's weaker now, so I have to be more generous. Was there matter before the Big Bang? Maybe. Give me advice how to study mechanics from your experience. How to study mechanics? Look, so the advice I give to every undergrad or everybody studying physics is go to office hours. There are going to be things that are going to be tricky that you don't understand, that are not intuitive. Go to office hours, have somebody explain it to you. What would you call a Blitz branded crypto coin? I don't know, I probably wouldn't though. Crypto coins seem like a scam. So, do spinning gyros help prove the Earth is round? Yes, they do. I thought you were referring to like Greek euros. And I'm like, no, euros do not prove the Earth is round. Thoughts on people graduating in 5 to 6 years rather than 4? I mean, it's fine. Like, do what you gotta do. Sorry for the yawn. My cat's been a nightmare. We really have to talk to a cat behaviorist because she's been not letting anybody sleep for more than a few hours. No ring laser gyros prove movement, but of what? No. So gyroscopes, they can show that as you're moving, like in a plane, for example, they can show that the axis, that the direction that the gyroscope is pointing in is changing. And from the conservation of angular momentum, that means that you must be changing your orientation. So as you're traveling, your orientation is changing. And so you could just travel around the Earth and you'd find that the orientation goes in a full circle. And that means that you have to be changing your orientation, which means that the Earth is a sphere. You can also just sit still, and because the Earth, rotates about its axis, you can also show that the Earth is rotating as well, using a ring laser gyro, for example. All right, y'all, it is past time to end the live. I am going to end the live here. I need to go get some water. But before I go, I need to shill for myself. So remember, make sure to join the Discord server if you want, and you're 18 plus. This is a cool thing that you can do. Cool place to ask me questions, talk with like-minded people, talk with the YouTubers if you're on TikTok, talk with the TikTokers if you're on YouTube during the live stream. It's a cool thing to do. Secondly, if you want access to my debate notes, which are the notes that I use during all of my debates. They have resources, they have sources, they have arguments, they have counter-arguments, all these things. Make sure to become a Patreon patron or become a YouTube member on either account. You'll get access to those notes for like $5 a month or something like this. And you'll have access to them forever, and if I change them, then you'll see the changes. So consider that. Anyway, we have one last super chat from Daniel with the $5. If space-time itself can curve, can it also quantize? And if so, what does that mean for the idea of location? Well, we don't know how to quantize space-time. That's the whole question of quantum gravity. But being able to curve and being able to quantize, these are not things that are inherently related. But yeah, if we can quantize space-time, there is a good question of what does it mean when we say that a thing is at a place, right? But yeah, we just don't know at this point. Oh, and if you want to join the Discord, there's a link in the description of my YouTube videos if you're watching them now, like on the live stream, or if you are watching on TikTok, go to the link tree in my bio. There you will be able to find a link to the Discord server. All right, I'm going to see you guys tomorrow for some debates, and I'm going to go probably drink some water, make myself a sandwich, and then have a meeting. Take care, everybody.